Good evening, everyone. My name is TJ Alds. I'm the owner and executive editor of I-45 Now, and on behalf of the Texas City Lamar Chamber of Commerce and College of the Mainland, I'd like to welcome those of you here in the auditorium at College of the Mainland and those of you viewing tonight as we present a candidates forum featuring the candidates for Texas City Commission at large. To explain that race, by the way, there are 2 positions open. We have 3 candidates. The top 2 vote getters would be elected to office. And for the first time in a long while, I actually have all incumbents at a forum. That's actually kind of rare out here. So we actually have all 3 of our candidates tonight are sitting city commissioners. They explain to everyone about the format tonight. It's an interview style question and answer session here. There are topics that we are going to be covering tonight in this next hour. Each of the candidates was given a heads up of what those topics would be, but they do not know what the specific questions will be tonight. There is no time limit. My job as the moderator is to keep everyone pretty balanced, but the idea is for you to hear the answers as fully as they can. I have asked all of the candidates to be succinct in their answers, something beyond yes or no, but to give something, keep it around 90 seconds to 2 minutes if they can, on their answers. And there is allowed to be a little bit back and forth, and I may ask a question, but based on the answer I may hear from one of the candidates here, do a follow-up with one of the other candidates or the candidate that may have made a remark. As I said, it's an interview style. At the end of our forum here tonight, each of the candidates will be given 2 to 3 minutes to give an elevator speech or their last pitch to you to get your votes. Early voting, by the way, started today and will continue until May the 2nd, and then May 5th is Election Day. We'll tell you more of the details of that here shortly. And the candidates drew for order of not only where they get to sit, but also what order they will go when we give their presentations at the end. But we will be starting off right away with getting into the questions right off the bat. And as I said, there's no particular order. We'll bounce around as much as possible. But one of the things that's always important in Texas City is economic development. It's economic development in Texas City is kind of a mixed bag. You have obviously industry, you have retail, you have small mom and pop industries in town. You have big box retailers here as well. We've seen a significant amount of growth on the west side of town here, particularly in recent years. Palmer Highway seems to go down and come back and is getting a lot of reinvestment in it. And 6th Street is showing some signs, but there are other parts of the community where we have blight. Closer you get to downtown, for example, a lot of empty buildings. And recently we had found out that, for example, a long-time stalwart business that was near downtown, Hoffman Lumber, will be closing at the end of the month. So with that in mind, what should be the Texas City's approach to economic development to mix all of those in and the policies that the City Commission could be? And I'm going to go ahead and start with you, Commissioner Deanne Haney.
All right. I'd like to say thank you to College of the Mainland and to TJ with I-45 Now, and also to the Texas City Lamar Chamber for hosting this. As far as economic development, I do believe that the blight is a problem, and I really want to be more aggressive on code enforcement and get a repeat offenders ordinance so when people violate certain nuisance rules, they can be fined more money, and it kind of goes after the landlord and not the tenant. And I think when you have rental properties, a lot of time, those are the ones that are causing the issues. And then when you don't get to the owner, then nothing happens. And other cities have done it successfully, and I think that would be a really good thing to do. When
you say on rental, let me just clarify, are you talking about those that lease space for a business or for a residential? Primarily?
I'm talking about for residential, but also there are businesses, and we saw one that was at 9th and 9th that's been there forever that just toppled over, I guess, because of all the weight of the water. But it's one of those things that you have to build it and they will come, and we just have to I think we're going down the right path. We just got to keep doing it.
How about it, Commissioner Haney? And I was remiss, by the way. One of the things everyone in the room knows, everyone here, I should point out, this is Commissioner Deanne Haney, Commissioner Phil Roberts, who's also the Mayor Pro Tem, and Commissioner Bruce Clawson here with us tonight. Commissioner, let me ask you what Deanne had said here about a repeat offender ordinance that are the books and code enforcement. But what approaches do you, particularly as I said, the blight that we see in certain parts of town that need to be addressed?
Texas City already is taking quite a few steps to try to address the situation. We recently put in a municipal court of record, which means that it's much easier for the city now to go after those that are not taking care of their buildings, that become dilapidated, and we're getting much more aggressive about going after a lot of those buildings and have taken a lot of steps already through code enforcement to try to address those situations. There will always be others that we need to address, but I think the city is doing a pretty good job right now in addressing the code enforcement.
What's one area you'd like to see kind of added to that layer, maybe that hasn't been implemented yet, or that needs to get a little more aggressive?
I think in the area of residential, I think that there's a lot of residences that people really do need to keep up with what the codes require them to do, and they're not doing that. And so there are certain residential areas that we can be more aggressive on.
It becomes a fine line, though, doesn't it, Bruce? When you clamp down on code enforcement, you start hearing more complaints at City Hall. You see the blight, and it's kind of it's a tough of a balance. How do you balance those out of being fair to folks, but at the same time making sure you are, it gets down to kind of one of those Texas rights. Hey, it's my property. I can do with it what I want, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like parking in your front yard. Some folks feel like they have the right to park in their front yard, and of course that detracts from the neighborhood and causes problems. In Texas City, we have addressed it, and we have dedicated quite a bit of personnel. I know you asked Mayor Pro Tem Roberts what he'd like to see. What I'd like to see would be a dedicated staff that doesn't do anything but address that type of problem. Right now, we use police officers, and then we have to sometimes balance their duties, and we use other city personnel. The ultimate solution to me would be to dedicate some staff towards that. And that's what they do solely, and they'll address it. It's not as easy as it seems. The laws are complex. There's time limits in there that are incredible. Sometimes there's 30 or 40 days, and another 30 or 40 days, and another 30 or 40. And see if we can't address some of that through the legislature and get some order in the city.
I wonder, though, Dan, if the court of record, as Philip pointed out, if you think that's going to help maybe address the problem that Bruce brought up, to speed up the process in many cases where it's known the owner is not going to take care of a certain property.
Maybe a little bit, but like they said, the timeline is kind of the timeline. I think it makes it easier because maybe you don't have to go to Galveston, you can go right to Texas City, but the problem is people just do it over and over and over again. So then I come write you a ticket, clean it up. You wait a couple weeks, then you do something similar. You've got all kinds of vehicles in your yard or junk or trash or whatever it is. And, until people are held accountable, and I also worry that I don't think our system is really closed loop because I know the officers follow up. And I mean, they don't follow up. They go out there, they look at something, and then sometimes when I ask for status, it'll be, 2 weeks later, it looks the same as it did the first time. So.
But in that, in a way, Commissioner Roberts, is that you're pulling police officers to be doing that job. How about, let me ask you first, I'll come back to you, Dan, about Commissioner Clawson's statement about a dedicated staff. Is that something you think the city needs to be moving toward?
That would help. That would help. We do have a very dedicated staff right now through the officers and those that are working our code enforcement, and they are doing the best job that they can.
Well, I think in this case, not dedicated as far as doing their job, but an actual staff, that's all they do.
That's correct. I understand.
Commissioner, would you support that plan as well?
Well, I think we do definitely need more resources, and we actually had a community development report this last meeting, and I'm not going to get into quoting the numbers because I would be off on that, but we tore down a whole lot of houses in a short period of time, and they did it with a whole lot less people than some of the other cities that we surpassed in the numbers. And I do agree that they're doing the best that they can do, but, we're going to have to spend the money at some point. If you want to hire staff, you got to pay salaries and benefits, and I think that the people who are residents here are ready to see things cleaned up, whatever it takes to do that.
Because if anything, particularly as I had pointed out, there are just certain pockets of the city, as I said, you get toward the east side of town particularly, you hear that more and more from residents. And you hear that also too when you talk to Chief Burby, Police Chief Robert Burby, and others, that it has that kind of domino effect with the crime, the whole broken windows theory that goes out there. On economic development, and Bruce, I'll get this to you first. You know, there's always the talk about big gets. You know, when you hear about economic development, it's about the big projects coming in, the big retail space, and everything else. But you don't hear a whole lot about what's being done for small businesses. Now, Texas City has taken an effort along 6th Street, for example, of helping out businesses, giving them incentives to develop down there, and that seems to have worked. Everything from discounts on paint, or even free paint in many cases if they'll fix the facade, and tax breaks and the like for them. How about, but overall, it's one thing to do it right there at 6th Street. How about the rest of the community and other efforts for help out small business owners to encourage that? Because it's a dying breed in many cases.
It certainly is a dying breed. The large box stores have been destroying the small business for a number of years, and I suspect it'll continue. You know, cities can do a lot of things we're doing, especially on 6th Street. There's not a whole lot that you can do as a city other than be as supportive as possible, instruct your staff to support them as they try to expand their store, try to clean their store for what they intend to do. But as far as tax breaks, it's difficult sometimes for a small business as opposed to a larger business. So basically all you can do, just some of the things that you normally do, is make it a friendly atmosphere to run your business and open your business in Texas City. Hey Mikey's is an example. Hey Mikey's was in Galveston. We certainly helped them rework the business on 6th Street, and he has a lease, I think a fair lease, a good lease for him. We'd like to do it more. If we own more buildings somewhere through the city, we could do that. But it's difficult to go too far because of the statutes that we operate under.
Right. How about, Commissioner, about the small business? What more can be done to help small businesses in this community?
First of all, when we look at economic development as a whole for the city, we have a very good economic development corporation for the city of Texas City that does a lot in that, and we really have one of the best chambers of commerce in the entire state that really does a great job in developing not only new business, but in also working with the businesses that we already have here and continuing to grow those businesses.
No, but how about small businesses? So what can more be done for them?
Well, I'm thinking of some of the things that the chamber does, such as small business development type of training. And there's a lot of different types of training, things such as learning QuickBooks, and learning various ways of managing a business and running a business that can be helped, and they are doing a good job in trying to develop that, I think.
Commissioner Haney, let me ask you, what the one thing that's missing that the city may not be doing to help small businesses either locate here, maybe already here, and flourish?
Well, and I look out in the audience and I see a lot of familiar faces, and I know y'all may experience this too, but whenever you start a project at your house, I'm always wishing Busby's was there. As I drive to Lowe's 1,000 times because you can't get it all on the first trip. And I really think from a quality of life perspective that when we provide the housing here, which we are, that people are going to stop wanting to drive so far, and that we're going to become more community-based, and we're going to have the people here who work here and they don't live other places. They come here, and then we'll be able to support these smaller businesses.
Gotcha. Last question on the economic development side of things. There may be, it's been back and forth of what to develop there. Phil, I'll let you go first on this one. But the Texas City Dike area. We've seen recently Boyd's expand its operations out there. But outside of that, that's about it in that area. Outside of the pure recreational. What's one, if there anything in the pipeline for taking more advantage of the dike, or does there need to be something else that's looked at for the dike area to make it, I don't want to say touristy, but something that's just an attraction for folks in that area more?
Well, the dike is one of the hidden jewels of Texas City. As most Texasidians know, it's 6 miles out into the bay, and after Hurricane Ike, they came back and they redid the dike, and so it's really is a nice place to go for tourists and the citizens of Texas City as a recreation area. And I think we need to continue working not only in the recreation side of it, but developing businesses around that, such as Boyd's. You mentioned Boyd's. They are building a tremendous facility right there at the entrance of the dike, and it's going to be a benefit to the entire city. When businesses like that can grow and develop, it benefits the whole city.
And we should point out, with Boyd's in particular, that there was the economic development of the dike was the old bait camps, and they weren't the best looking of places out there. But Jason has personally been committed to what he's done out there with Boyd's. And how about it, Dan? What, looking at that area around the Texas City dike, what more can be done to make it a commercially viable, or does it need to be? Does it need to be more just a recreational area?
Well, I wish it was more commercially viable, and I wish that we had a restaurant out there to go to. And right now, we don't have any water or sewer or electricity to the end of the dike, or even, just at the base of it. And
Let me ask, since you said it, would you support an infrastructure program to put something in? I know you can't go too far. You can't go through the levee, that's for sure. But would you support doing something more out that way?
I would, and I think one way that you could generate the revenue is right now we don't charge year-round on the weekend for people going on the dike to launch their boats or whatever if they're not a citizen. If you're a citizen here, you got a free pass, so it shouldn't be an issue. But I would recommend that we reissue them so they're a little bit different than they are now, so everybody in League City and Friendswood and Clear Lake doesn't have one. And then we charge year-round, and just the amount that we've been doing the last 2 or 3 years, we've made over $600,000 a year. And I think that's a revenue stream you could tap into to do those infrastructure things that need to be done.
I'll come back to that because that's an interesting part of the topic. Let me ask you first before you get into the bigger topic, Bruce, is how about that charging year-round, particularly on the weekends, for access to the dike and not just special holidays in the summer?
Well, let me back up just a little bit and go back to the topic you were just on about the dike itself. To me, there's 2 parts of the dike, and you mentioned both of them. As you approach the levee itself,
Right.
and then as you go over the levee. I think when you go over the levee, it should stay like it is. It's an excellent fishing area. There's more than 5 miles. It's well used. Goodness gracious, we do get quite a bit of money. So it is working well, and it does serve as a heck of a fishing pier and an attraction. When you come back to this side of the levee, then to me you get into the commercial development because you can move water and sewer and the other utilities very quickly to someplace. And I would like to see a restaurant there, or the money that we are raising through the fee. And I am for the fee. I don't know about year-round. I don't know how that works. We take a look at that. But we do it in the summertime. It raises enough money. And by way of explanation, the money itself is spent out on the dike. Since there's no power, everything's solar out there. It's green from one end to the other. It's not terribly expensive, but it does cost more. It has to be maintained. There's piers out there. There's everything in the world that we can put out there. If you come back on this side of the dike, on the levee side, we can do more with that as far as basic restaurants and attractions. But I think about along the lines you spoke about earlier, we can encourage businesses to go there. I don't know if Landry's would like to go there and build certainly build another Kima, but we'd be delighted to talk to him, see if we couldn't help him.
Tillman Fertitta, if he's not watching the Rockets play tonight, I guess he can hear there. And Phil, let me just ask you, just on the one specific topic about charging more often, weekends, maybe year-round or something like that at the dike. Because the first thought was, well, don't charge on the weekends during the winter and the summertime. It's not as busy. It's more of a hassle.
Right.
But how about that proposal that Commissioner Haney brought
I think it's worth looking at and reviewing to see, you have to offset it with the cost of the personnel that have to be there to charge the entrance and all of that. And if it looks like there's enough business to make that viable, then I think that would work.
transitioning now from economic development, particularly talking about the dike, we mentioned the levee, and that brings me to talking about Hurricane Harvey. Texas City, always known as the community, as a community because of the hurricane protection levee and the floodgates and of the with the screw pumps as being one that can weather the storm. We saw it during Ike. If this became the kind of center point to help out the community. But Harvey, obviously, biblical proportions. I don't think we can understate that at any point with that type of flooding. But as a longtime Texas City resident myself, and I know for the three of y'all had noticed, there were areas that really got hit that flooded. We've never seen flood before. But there's also trouble spots that no matter what flood in this town, older infrastructure and the like. And I want to address because those parts were hard hit really during Harvey. What needs to be done, and we'll start with you on this one, Phil, just what needs to be done on flood mitigation overall in the city right now? Because had it not been for a low tide at a certain time during all of Harvey, and that the floodgate was able to open, for those who may not understand, that floodgate out of Moses Lake helps get that water out. That low tide doesn't come, and that water is able to get out. The city's in a lot of trouble at one point after Harvey. But what needs to be done by the city for hurricane? We should point out the levee and the floodgate are actually technically county, but it's in the city itself.
The pumps are operated by the city, and the floodgate itself is operated by the county. But I do want to first of all say that our city personnel in all aspects during Hurricane Harvey performed superbly. They were out there helping people immediately, and the personnel that worked in the floodgates and worked well with people operating the pumps so that it was all handled to the best of our abilities. It was close. You're absolutely right. It could have been a potential disaster, but they were able to handle things in a way that Texas City was kept safe. And I do want to say that, and not just that, but also our police department, fire department.
I got that. Let's get to the flood issue itself.
Okay.
No one's going to doubt that, but about flooding, because I can tell you right now, anyone who lives near and around Moses Lake, anytime it gets right, they're the first to be screaming, "Hey, my house is about to go underwater." So I'm sure they admire the police as well, but they have to call on them more often than they need to.
I have to tell you, TJ, I live across the street from
Right.
Moses Lake,
Right.
as you may know, and I can look out my door and look at that gate, and I could tell when it was open and when it wasn't. But yes, we did have some damage to our stormwater levee system, and the city was immediately out there assessing the damage and deciding what needed to be done to repair that, so that if we do have another incident that comes in this hurricane season, the city needed to be prepared to get those repairs done so that the city is protected immediately. And that was done in an expeditious fashion.
How about long-term, though? Because there are flooding issues, particularly in the older parts of the South. What needs to be done to address those right now?
Well, there's one big issue that I think would be helpful if we could get a pump system to put where we can pump the water out of Moses Lake and over the levee system, so that we don't have to rely on waiting until the Galveston Bay goes down so we can open the gate to let the water out. If we can get a pump system now, it's going to be expensive, and we will need help beyond just the city's resources to do that. But I think that would be something that would be beneficial to the city overall. There are other areas of Texas City that drainage needs to be addressed, absolutely. The South Point area, the Amber and Oaks area, they all had floodwaters, and other areas. We had 1,400 homes in Harvey that still had water in their houses. And a lot of those people are still suffering today, and we need to continue to try to help them.
You brought up about the pumps to get water out and over the levee. I saw you nodding yes. I take it, Deanne, that you agree with taking that approach?
I do, and something that kind of along those lines as far as Harvey, right now there's monies that are going to come down, and it's round one from the GLO, basically the General Land Office. So they put out a report that's out there that all of you can go look at, and you have until the 26th of April to make a comment, but we're not getting our fair share. And they're giving $1.15 billion each to Harris County and to the city of Houston. And then The other 10 counties in the Houston-Galveston Area Council have $771 million basically to spend, of which only 130 is dedicated to infrastructure among 10 counties. So,
Yeah, and I was going to get to that too. Let's go, but let me finish up that and come back to you on that subject. But let me just ask about what areas about flood mitigation, just overall. I mean, Harvey obviously is a unique storm, but overall flood mitigation, what needs to be done in the city right now?
well, I think part of it is we need to put the cameras down the lines, because there's some that, like for instance, out off of Vaucher, where like one of the drains is completely blocked off. And so there's a lot of places where people have either put stuff down the drain, or maybe with the amount of concrete we have there, the drainage is not adequate. So we need to make it bigger, and we need to make it go to those outfalls. But after Ike, we did the 15th Avenue drainage ditch, and that helped a lot of the issues. And I mean, that helped 9th and 9th for sure. That doesn't flood anymore.
That's for sure. And that's one of the things to point out, the address. Bruce, what needs to be done as far as flood mitigation in Texas City?
Well, Texas City uses storm sewers, open ditches, bios, but most of it goes to Moses Lake. And I agree with Phil. It's imperative that we somehow lift it out and over the levee. It is difficult. I think it's beyond expensive. It's terribly expensive. But over the years, we have come to rely on Moses Lake for the water to go that direction. And we have been very fortunate when the floodgate would open and it would stop raining and the tide would go out. When I was emergency manager, it happened to me several times. Just a few more inches would have been the difference in a catastrophe, and the tide went out. So to me, we need to address the open ditches, the bows. One example of bow is it runs behind Lowe's. You can look back there, and quite a bit of the water from the western part of the city heads that way. Moses Bow brings quite a bit of water, but it brings us to Moses Lake. So the most important thing to me is that we develop a process of moving the water out of Moses Lake. Whatever we put in, we take out. It's a sensitive area, and we have to be very careful about what we take out of there. But I think we can develop a system, which was one of the original problems of why it wasn't done that way, why the water was pumped into the lake instead of over the levee like it is in other places. But I think that we can figure out now what the level of the lake is and how to protect the sensitive areas and get the water out of the lake, and that'll increase our capacity to absorb the Harvey instance dramatically.
Deanne brought up, which has been a real touchy subject with the county commissioners here particularly. It was kind of a semi-shock, although they kind of knew it was coming, the GLO funding. What, as a city commission, really influence can you have on that? And Bruce, I'll start with you, and we'll go down the line here on that funding. Particularly when you start looking at Galveston County, you know, Texas City has its needs, but really then it's competing in that case for a little bit of money. Dickinson, super hard hit. Friendswood, super hard hit. And portions of Lake City, hard hit as well. But Dickinson, you know, the neighbor right to the north of Texas City, essentially devastated in many communities. What can, as a city commissioner, the city commission as a body do to help influence that right now?
Well, by way of explanation, as Ms. Haney referred to, quite a bit of the money goes to Houston-Galveston Area Council, which is kind of a quasi-government agency where funds are funneled to and then funneled out of there. It's a 14-county area that has gone together, and there are many of them in Texas. Our problem is, if we're going to go that way, is that almost 83 cents on every dollar always goes to Harris County and Houston. It's happened that way as long as I've known it and been involved with HGAC. So what I think we have to do is we'll have to develop our own projects and push them through not only the state legislature if we can, but also push them through Congress. The Ike Dike is an example about that. There's a lot of discussion about what's appropriate. Harris County wants to use the system where they're up around the Fred Hartman Bridge, and that's where they protect themselves. And so there is no quick, simple solution, and it's expensive. But I think that we can look to HGAC, but we should look better to our legislatures. That's how the levy got put in the 60s after Carla, was they did not look to, HGAC wasn't there then, in fairness, but they did not look to the state too much, or the locals. They simply went to Congress and said, we need this, you'll have to have it.
Phil, about maybe a different approach than waiting on the GLO to make a decision, or HGAC to make a decision, just go find what we need some other way?
I think Texas City is already doing a good job, not only of response to a disaster, but also being prepared. And we need to let the people at HGAC or the state legislature or the national government know that by being prepared, by having these things in place, we're saving millions and millions of dollars in damage that you can see occurs in other places that may not be as prepared. So we need to let our star shine a little bit and show those projects, such as getting that stormwater levee system repaired immediately, and now we can go back. We spent over $1 million on that through the city. Now we can go back, and I actually led a team from FEMA and the Office of Management and Budget to go out and look at that system to see the damage and to assess for themselves, so they could see now that we have handled that damage, got it repaired, and then we can go to them and ask them for repayment of those funds that we've made.
Dan, let me ask you, you brought it up about that funding from the GLO. What as a body, as a city commission, be able to do? Not, I mean, outside of, pretty much it's like you can scream and yell, but it just depends on what Commissioner Bush and his staff decide at some point, right?
Well, there's a group of people that are members or the representatives at HGAC, and we're meeting collectively, and the plan is to meet with the Land Commissioner, Bush, and then to potentially even go to DC and to talk to Congress, because right now, if we don't do something, nothing's going to happen. But the way they did it with the short comment period, with no public hearing to give anyone an opportunity to provide input, we as an elected body couldn't even do a proclamation because there was such a short time limit, they wouldn't have been able to get it on the agenda. So it's one of those things that we need to really all go out there and find it and make comments, and we're not going to be able to do it here by ourselves. We've got to have more money, and they're going to have to give it to us.
Let me ask, because the public comment period is open, has the commission made a vote at least voicing its displeasure with this to be on the record during that public comment period yet?
No.
Is it on the agenda before the public comment period opens?
No.
Let me just ask, why not?
Well, I'll jump on that one. First of all, again, there is a funding formula. You can protest it all you wish, but you're not going to break through that wall. Ms. Haney may think differently, and I'm sure she'll let you know. But that formula, you can protest it till the cows come home.
When you talk about the formula, it's about much for
It
a
is.
whole household income and like where it hits, and that always is
that
way
too,
higher.
And it is about Harris County and Houston receiving almost all the money. That's just simply the way it's been structured. And it's not that we haven't protested, or it's simply that you're not going to do any good in that particular manner.
When you're dealing with the feds and government entities like that, it's all about documentation. You have to have the documentation to prove that you need this to respond to that. And I think the city is doing a good job in getting that background information ready to present to them. It is being presented, and I feel like that in the long run, we're doing the best we can.
But presented, but not like a formal objection by the body.
That's correct.
Would you support doing that, or doing
Well,
the process that's taking place now?
One of the things that happened after Hurricane Ike is that you can request a waiver from the government, and we were able to get it lowered from 70%, what they call low to moderate income for projects, to 55%, which helps, because basically what you're looking at, because I know that this isn't going to make sense maybe to everybody else, but if you have a project, let's say this phone right here is a project, so they look at the footprint of the project, and if that whole project is not 70% low to moderate income, then it would be kicked out. So say they want to do improvements on Dickinson Bayou and they have to start in League City and go down, or start in a more affluent area, they're not going to meet the criteria.
It's a tough one when you're down to the end of the pipeline along the way. Keeping in we keep kind of these transitions here. We're going to talk about water in a different perspective now, and that's securing water, which is every city in the state is having to deal with, make sure there's more of a water supply. And particularly in this county, League City, you've seen making huge investments of getting water anywhere it can. Texas City has for years kind of led the way. Let me start with you, Bruce, on this. What more does the city need to be doing, because it ties in economic development, everything? What more should the city be doing to secure water or get other ways of bringing type of water systems into town?
Well, we get our water from the Gulf Coast Water Authority. It actually most of it comes out of the Brazos River, and is pumped to it through the ancient canal systems and is treated. Some date back to the early 1900s. That group is governed by a board, and we work with that board closely. And I understand your question, and the answer to me is slightly different than what you asked about. To me, the issue is conservation. There's only going to be so much water available no matter what we do, and we have to begin to conserve now. So to me, the answer is we need to conserve as much.
Okay, with that, so what should the city be doing to make people conserve?
Well, the city's taken some of those steps. We've begun the education step. We encourage people. Sometimes we'll not allow you to water your lawns but one of the things we did recently is we structured the water fee system, which I think you and I were tap dancing about there for a second, and let me just take it head on. We structured the water system. If you use a lot of water, you pay a little more than the neighbor that doesn't use a lot of water. And it was done so on purpose. It was done for a couple of reasons. One of the main ones is to begin the very painful process now of conserving water. I understand your question thoroughly. You would think that government could bring more water to you. There's just so much out
the
there.
question is about what to do overall, conservation
Yeah.
being one of it, because that is a point, because it goes to one of the questions I was going to ask, and as we go around, everyone have a chance, because the question to ask is, are we really charging folks enough for water as a city?
We've begun that. Now, in the previous years, we have not. In fact, several $1 million were taken used out of the general fund and put into the enterprise fund or the water fund. It's supplemented for a number of years. That stopped. The water fund is now paying the general fund back what it owes it, and it is self-sufficient. And it's a many-faceted problem. Not only do you have to purchase water, find water, but you also have to repair the system. Some of the parts of the city that you mentioned are quite old, quite antiquated. And it's a water and sewer fund. It's not just water.
Right.
And they have to be repaired and constantly repaired. And you're also wanting to move a lot of water that's available to new developments to encourage them to help that. The other side of it is the city recently, in the last couple of years, we picked up the water supply that used to go to the Robinson power plant. Y'all might remember the plant that was on the north side of town. All that water has been picked up, and now the city has the right to it, if you will. In fact, quite a bit of it's going to be used in the development on the north side, and also to the new schools that are going in the Dixon School District up there. The city also, when they redid Bay Street, laid a line that's not being used. And what the plan is that, and it's somewhat unpleasant in thought, but it works. The effluent, the water that comes out of the sewer plant each day.
Gray water.
Yeah, well, it's not even gray water.
Not even that, it's worse.
It's kind of not much fun to think about.
Yeah.
But the water that comes out is much more regulated than the water that's at your tap. So it's a lot safer, if you will, than the water that comes in your tap. So we are in the process of gathering that, and I think we'll begin to sell it to one of the industries and use that. That will take them off some of the water supply that's available to the industries, and also as a revenue stream for the city.
Commissioner, about water, dealing with all the issues, talking about conservation. I mentioned gray water only in that because we're seeing League City approach that, where parks done with gray water, the school system uses a gray water system. There are some proposals of new development having a gray water system that's separate from your tap water for watering the lawn, for example, and those type of things. What are the areas that Texas City needs to be doing along those lines?
You know, it's hard for people to be thinking about water conservation when we've had as much rain as we've had in the
Right.
past year. But going forward, it is going to be vital to our community that we take whatever conservation steps we can to try to save on water. And industry relies on an incredible amount of water. Our residents need water, and we may have to make sure that we continue to prepare to be ready for those issues as they come up. And some of the things about conservation have been mentioned. We have taken quite a few steps in the city already to try to adjust the situation. Some people are not happy about the water bill. I understand. But those steps that were taken, I think, are very important to put our city in the right direction toward water conservation.
I would take it, though, from what I'm hearing from the two of you so far, and I'll wait to hear from you here in a second, Deanne, is that you don't mind a little bit of the butt chewing on the water right now, because in the long run, it may pay off for everybody, I guess.
That's what I said, by the way.
Commissioner, it's a different term I know we've used before, but we are a family show tonight. Commissioner Haney, let me ask you on water, what more should the city be doing as we look long-term down the line?
Well, and I know what Commissioner Clawson mentioned about us getting the water rights. That was a big step. But right now, we lose a lot of water from leaks, and they're doing the best that they can to fix those, but some of the lines aren't marked, and then some of them are old and antiquated. And back then, it's the same thing that happens in the refineries too. They didn't put valves in everywhere like we do now when we put in piping. So they've got to go back, they've got to retrofit, they've got to stopple a line, or they got to cut the water off for a large group of people in order to do that. But as new developments come in, they're getting the new digital meters that it's actually an app you can get on your phone. You set parameters, and if you have a leak or something that gets outside of that, then it'll send you a text message. And we will be working throughout the city to replace other meters, and when they break, they're being replaced, but there will be a phase-in process at some point in the future.
Anytime we talk about city government, folks, they talk about water bills, but they always talk about their taxes as well. Texas City, despite its large industrial base that's located here, I went back just to double check myself on this today, because this has been one of the things I've been hearing from a lot of viewers is the rate right now is 57.7 cents per $100 valuation. It's the highest tax rate for a municipality in Galveston County. And it's the third largest city in Galveston County. Now, obviously, not everything's about the tax rate sometimes, but in this case, let me just ask this. I'm going to do it kind of the Goldilocks style thing. I'll start with you, Dan. Is the tax rate just right, too high, too low, in your opinion?
Well, I think there's a bigger problem. The tax rate is a direct result of the industrial communities such as Valero, who continue to challenge their tax valuation. Last year, we had to refund about $900,000 to Valero. So in the future, what we've got to do is find a way to assess industrial properties, number one, that everybody agrees on. But if we don't figure out a way to do that, we're either going to have to keep raising taxes, or we're going to have to cut city services. I mean, you can't have everything.
Let me ask, just to kind of clarify on that point, because that is a big issue, but how many different firms are we going to go through with the CAD as far as evaluating and get everyone on the same page? It seems like no matter what you come back with, oh yeah, we agree to that now, then the next time you come around, they're still going to protest. And in all fairness, a commercial business or an industry has just as much right as you and I as homeowners do, but what can be done there because that does affect the tax rate overall, and it does shift that burden to homeowners over when you see those, because they're getting a much bigger percentage break in the long run than a homeowner does when they go for the CAD. What can be done there?
Well, I'm not an expert at property appraising, but this can't be the only place in the world that has this type of issue. And I think in Texas, we have problems because of the way the environmental law is written and the pollution control, and people are claiming exemptions on pieces of equipment that was never the intention. And until you fix that, which should be very difficult because of lobbyists, and actually in the Austin area, there was a group who went to court and tried to get that changed, and they were unsuccessful. So that affects the school district too.
It does. Commissioner, how about it? The tax rate overall and it's an issue now. It's like get ready for the fight every single year now.
Valuation, it continues to be a huge issue, and it affects not only the city, but the school district even more because they rely on the valuation issues. But before any changes are going to take place, the change is going to have to come from Austin. And we have not been able to get any movement in Austin to try to address those issues of valuation that the city continues to rely upon for our basic services, paying for police, fire protection, and those things that the citizens require and need. We have to pay for it. And so we really do need to address the valuation system through the state government in Austin.
Overall, because a lot of the focus always is on the valuation system is for homestead homeowners, keeping
That's
those
correct.
caps in place. You don't hear that broader discussion that's taking place. As we keep approaching this, though, Commissioner Haney had said at the beginning, we're going to have to, at some point, maybe cut services. Are we almost to that point now? Because folks in Texas City, let's face it, somewhat spoiled with the services they get and the facilities they have compared to neighboring cities out here. Are we going to start seeing, God forbid, shutdowns of the Lowry Center or anything like that? I know that's sacrilege to say, but I'm going to the extreme here. But are we approaching the point we, as a city, need to start trimming back?
The city does a tremendous job with the resources that we have, but I don't think that raising property taxes is going to continue to be the answer. I think that we need to address the issues that we have, do the best with the resources that we have, and in the long run, we're going to have some changes in the basic structure before we can continue to go forward. Until
then, though, what gets done, Commissioner Bruce?
Well, the issue you raise is so difficult. It's enormously complicated. I recently was elected to the CAD board. One of the reasons that I asked to go there.
Good for you.
Yeah, well, not that
Right.
My wife said I wasn't doing enough for my community, and she's in the audience. No, one of the things, and I've learned so much since I've sat down at that board in a short period of time. Ms. Haney is correct. Mr. Haney is correct. There's what was an obscure law has now turned into a major battle about pollution control, and it is the basis of what the industry is using. Second is that, no, I don't think we're near the point where we have to cut back services. We've been fairly frugal about how we run the city, so I think we're okay on that. I don't think it's an issue. The tax rate is what it is, unfortunately. But let me give you another example. One of the things that we're pushing for in the CAD is something that you alluded to. Why, we shouldn't have to reinvent the wheel. There has to be a firm that can fairly assess those industries, and then it's a figure that we can all live with. Phil's right in that school's getting hit in the hardest on this. City took a hit, heck of a hit, but the school's getting hit in the hardest at a time when it can't. But let me give you an example of the complexity of it too. One of the things you hear about the CAD is that my rates are so high, and they set my rates artificially high. Well, all CADs are audited every 2 years.
We should put out when you're saying rates, but you mean values.
The value,
I'm
sorry, the value. My house is valued too high. The CAD is audited every 2 years, and the CAD has to pass this audit. And if it doesn't pass the audit, and it's not about the CAD itself, it's about school districts. Friendswood School District recently came off probation. If the CAD has not set the value above 95% or higher of what this audit from the state of Texas says, then the school district has 1 more year, the CAD and the school district have 1 more year to get it right, and then if it's not done correctly, so let's say it's 92%, then the school district will suffer a 3% cut in funding from the state
Right.
of Texas. So whereas, you look to the CAD for fairness, I assume would be a word. What you've got is a complex set of laws that are bringing constant pressure on that particular system, and that in turn causes a lot of problems in the tax system.
It becomes a very painful pass in the buck system from the state in many ways.
It has.
We hear about it a lot of the times, the unfunded mandates. This is kind of one that goes the opposite way, is that despite how much rhetoric you hear from the comptroller, you can say, saying, okay, we need to do better on taxpayers, but it's their office that comes in because the law says this, that, no, you didn't evaluate it high enough.
That's
Let me ask, so since you do sit in that position on the CAD board now, CAD, to be fair, the CAD board cannot tell the chief appraiser, you need to lower appraisal values by 10%
That's
every year.
absolutely correct.
Yeah, you can't do that. However, you can be as far as who approves on the industry side of things, which for Texas City is a big thing, and be part of that contract. Is part of the process being thought of to at least bring industry to the table to do, as Commissioner Haney suggested, of let's get someone we're all on the same page and agree, yeah, we'll trust what they do?
Well,
or is that possibly putting the fox into the hen house?
No. In fact, we're doing two things. We are going to locate a firm, or we are locating a firm that is fair. We're not the only place that have the industry. Lots of folks have industry, and they don't suffer quite the problems we have. So let's locate a firm, or we're trying to locate a firm that will help us give a fair value, that won't have to argue about so much. And the second thing that the CAD board does is provide that insulation. I don't want to be disrespectful to any elected official, but most people don't understand the effective tax rate. And you can often say, I lowered your taxes, when in fact the value of your home went up so much that even if I gave you a penny or so, we still collected more taxes. So the CAD board's main job is to provide that buffer so that no elected officials can produce a higher rate, a higher value to your home. And
Yeah,
that's one of our main ones.
used to be, I called it the Vic Pearson rule of
I miss him.
back in, because long before we started
Good
talking
man.
about effective tax rate stuff, when he was mayor of Jamaica Beach, and obviously he was a CAD member, is that, listen, if you're paying more on your tax bill, it's a tax rate. Yeah, it's a tax increase. It's not a reduction, despite used to be, we had to change our terminology for then. We did start a little bit late tonight, so I should point out, so we're not going to be done right at 7:30. Quickly transitioning from that, public safety, Texas City Police Department has, up until recently, had a lot of vacancies, and they had to get them all filled here. I think now they're at full staff, but as the city keeps growing geographically more toward the west, that now you start bringing in more traffic from I-45, more needing to do from easy access there. I'll start with you on this one, Phil. Is that what on Texas City PD, are we at the right staffing levels? The city commission need to come in and find more funds to increase the police force in Texas City right now? I mean, crime rates we see are going down over there. We've had an uptick in 2017, but what needs to be done to get the force at an appropriate level for Texas City PD?
Public safety really does need to be our top priority. And supporting the police department and the fire department from that respect really is very important. I think staffing-wise, we're at a good level right now, but we need to plan for the future. In the next few years, we're going to have growth in this city that's going to require more staffing, more police and fire protection for our citizens in different areas of town. And we have to start doing the planning now to be ready for that growth in the future. We're okay right now, but in the future, we're going to have to be ready.
Do you see Chief Burby coming already to having that discussion? I'm sure mainly it's with the mayor right now, but are you hearing about that discussion happening right now?
Yes, there are discussions going on, and the chief and other Chief Zackrell with the fire department and others, they're all in discussions right now to make the arrangements and do the planning that's going to be required for the future.
And I'm glad you brought up the fire, because I don't want to leave out the fire department, because they're the one having fire department stationed around. Dan, where do you see where the planning is for for what needs to be? Where is staffing level PD now? Do you think that's adequate, or does the city commission need to start stepping up to see that increase as we start looking toward the future mainly?
Well, as part of the master plan for the emergency services buildings, there is a plan to, on the west side of Tanger, there's 5 acres that are going to be dedicated to a public safety building. So it could have fire, EMS, police. Of course, you're going to have to build the building, so maybe that's $7 million, and then you're going to have to get equipment, and then you're going to have to get staff. But in answer to your question about the police, I don't think that we have enough people, and I've been asking about that probably the last 3 or 4 years, and I think we should have been phasing in a couple of officers a year for a period of time. It's just not realistic for them to go all the way from East Texas City to Tanger Mall, and when they get tied up on a call, that's what happens. And I mean, not to leave the fire out either.
Right.
I mean, we want to make sure that we give them, like radios. Right now, there's a big deal with radio interoperability, and then when they're in a fire situation, in a structure fire, being able to communicate with the person that's inside and outside because they have issues with the radio.
Bruce, you're a retired cop. So how about it on the public safety side of things?
Well, I certainly hear from both the police officers and the firemen, and some from Chief Burby. My thoughts are we need to have some structured growth, some very careful growth here. We're right on the edge. I agree with Phil. We're adequate with where we're at, but we cannot be complacent because we're adequate. We need to plan. Buildings certainly cost a lot of money. We need to plan those. But we do need to get on a program where we understand our growth and we'll bring our officers, both police and fire, up to whatever is needed. They are expensive, though.
Yeah,
It has to be planned carefully.
And Texas City's not the only one going the struggle. Recruiting officers right now, there's a lot of young officers on the street right now, we can tell. And recruiting officers is the tough thing, the investment that goes in there. As we wrap up here, let's address the white elephant in this election. And it's going to deal with you, mainly Commissioner Haney, but it also the effect it has on that. You are still facing the felony charges from the incident that happened last summer. We're not here to litigate the case here.
Right.
But a big question that comes up with voters is, why doesn't she show remorse? Until recently, when you did a Facebook post in which you did talk about a lot of the case, but also reflect that, why did it take so long for you to publicly acknowledge at least remorse in that case? Because that's been the biggest thing that's probably happened on this. And the second part of that question, let me ask you, is this. Is that with this hanging over your head, the effectiveness of you, if a trial comes along, and you have your work at the same time, and then you have your duties as city commissioner, what are you telling voters about, well, we don't know what may happen with you here? What are you telling voters to overcome that? So both of those, if you could address those now, and then we'll get to both of you gentlemen too.
So I was involved in an accident. As I've said all along, I'm innocent.
As I said, we're not going to talk about the case itself.
But, I was advised by my attorneys not to say anything. I tried to let the system work. It's too slow, and that's why I've come out now and started saying something. But I'm not indicted, and, there's a negative toxicology report. There's a breathalyzer that was.
Again,
I'm just saying.
I understand.
There's nothing there except an accident.
Yeah, I understand that. Except that's again talking about the case.
Right.
I know you would like to get that out, but this is specifically to the issues that address the voters about the public remorse, about why not an earlier statement, why the statement only come when you have 2 challengers in the race now. At that point, why did it wait until this long?
I was waiting for the system to work. And to me, we have a broken system, but that would be a whole nother interview topic of a different day. But, I was advised not to say anything, and that's what I did. Of course I'm remorseful. I mean, anyone who knows me knows that I wouldn't purposely go try to run over people on the side of the road. I got called out to work. I wasn't drinking. I wasn't stoned. I wasn't drunk. Nothing. There's no evidence that shows that.
And you should point out why you say you have not been indicted. It's not gone to the grand jury. You are charged, though.
I'm charged,
It's
but
a felony
not
charge.
right.
I just wanted to clarify for the record there. Commissioner Clawson, you early on was critical of Commissioner Haney staying on Commissioner's Court at the time. You still stand by those words you said early on last summer?
Well, let's look at those words, and they're about Commissioner Haney because that's the case before us. I'm sorry, that's the issue before us. My words were simple words. No one has the right to embarrass the city of Texas City. Myself, no one else. Any number of individuals, and I hate to use the term politicians, it's kind of overworked. Any number of individuals have struggled with life's personal issues. We're, after all, we're human beings. That being said, but once you're in the public's eye, you represent the city. My statement was based on the fact that it was not Deanne Haney, who's an individual and has a right to struggle with her life as she will, but it was Commissioner Haney. My statement was also made because myself and the rest of the commissioners were sitting there facing you and the rest of those hostile cameras by ourselves. We sat there, and it wasn't Commissioner Clawson, it was an associate of Commissioner Haney. So my statement then is my statement now about myself or anyone else, about the President of the United States, the Governor of the state of Texas, whomever. No one has the right to embarrass the body that they represent. And that's what I felt about it, and that's why. And again, those were some hostile days where we sat there, and you've been a reporter. I'll come back at you. You talked about a retired police officer. You bet I've lived in the public eye all my life, all 40 plus years. And I understand the rules. And I also understand the reporters can be pretty rough. You guys can, much as you're being now, you guys can ask some tough questions as you must, as you feel you must. And myself, and I'll speak for myself, I was the guy sitting there in front of the camera where reporters are coming up and asked, do you smoke dope? You know, I had some choice words, and none of them were ones that my mom would be proud of. Let me lighten the moment just a minute, if I might.
As I said, let's keep it on the topic here.
Yeah, I'm staying on the topic, but that was the basis of my statement. Yes, I said it. Said it then, say it now. No one has a right to embarrass the institution that they represent. Still believe that.
Phil, I mean, it was a rough few days after that, but to be fair to Commissioner Haney, how has it affected city governance at all?
Well,
Are there things that haven't gotten done because of this issue?
shortly after the incident, as Commissioner Clawson was saying, there were TV cameras and crews that came from all over to the area to the city commission room. They set up in the chambers, and we had to face the cameras. And I said some words then. My response then is the same probably that it is now. And, you know, our hearts go out to all of those that were involved and their families. And I think that's still the case. Now, I'm not going to get into whether the district attorney has done anything or not done anything.
Right. I mean, as I said, again, we're not going to litigate the case here.
And my position on this all along has been, you know, I'm asking for people to vote for me because I feel like that I've done a good job for the city, and I want to continue doing that.
And I'll give you the final word on this, because I know you want to talk about the case and do that. And as I said, we wanted to keep it more of just kind of the impression of that. But if at any point did you consider stepping down? Seriously consider it?
No, not seriously, because I'm innocent. And so to me, if you just go and you step down, that gives a presumption of guilt. And in this country, we're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. And just like Commissioner Clawson was saying, you know, the media and some of the law enforcement really jumped to some conclusions without having any factual evidence. And then once they found out I was an elected official, it's like, let's roll the snowball down the hill and let's go for it.
But what factually has been wrong reported?
Well, I wasn't impaired, number one. They had...
Well, to be fair, the affidavit says you were.
Well, and
that you admitted. I mean,
yeah.
As I said, I mean, I know you say that you weren't. I mean, again, we're not going to litigate it,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying, since you're bringing up the media, but what factually has been wrong? Because that is documented. What
Well,
factually has been wrong?
Well, I was not impaired. I did a breathalyzer, 0.00 twice. There's a toxicology report that shows that I had no...
And that hasn't been reported?
Not all in one place.
Okay. I was gonna say, just to be fair, I think it has been reported on the findings so far that's been out there. Again, not to litigate the case, but I wanted to give you the final word on that there. And I know it's a tough subject, but it is the subject that a lot of folks are addressing right now, and I appreciate you taking the time to do that. Appreciate all of you being here tonight. Let's please give them all a hand here tonight. As I said, we drew earlier for a place of how the order to make their final presentation here, 2 to 3 minutes each. Commissioner Roberts, you were first. You feel free to stand if you like as well. Just give your legs a stretch. Just don't go wandering off anywhere from there if you want.
No, you're good. I am a lawyer. I've been practicing law for 40 years, so I do have to stand to address the court. So, first of all, I want to thank you all for coming here. I think this has been a very good opportunity to address the issues and to talk about Texas City and what we need to do going forward. And that's what I really want to do. I want to help move Texas City forward. I've mentioned some things tonight I want to go over again. First of all, public safety has to be our top priority. We have to support our police and fire departments. We have to do those things that are necessary. And we're doing a lot of things well right now. Things such as the West End Ministerial Alliance, where we have the police and the community working together to address issues as they come up. We have town hall meetings on things such as the opioid crisis. And we're addressing issues that are facing Texas City right now, and we need to go forward. We need to do planning. Texas City is going to be facing a tremendous growth in the future, both on the industrial side, on the commercial side, and on the residential side. We need to do the planning now to be prepared for that growth as it comes. We need to untap the potential that Texas City has. We have tremendous potential in our city. We need to untap that potential and be ready to go forward. And lastly, we need to make this a place that families will want to raise their children and make this a place for all of us to live, work, and play in a way that we would all enjoy. So,
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate it. Next up, Commissioner Dan Haney.
Yeah, again, I want to thank everyone who put this together. I'm running on my record. This would be my 8th term, should I be successful at getting elected. I've done a good job. I participate on countywide boards, the regional council of government, and really feel like I'm the most qualified from the whole picture perspective. It's unfortunate I was involved in an accident. That's kind of thrown a shadow over me. But again, I'm innocent. I grew up here. I've spent my whole life here. I've spent the better part of my adult life giving back to the community, and I would like to continue to do that. And I just hope that people have the ability to understand what's really going on here and that they are thinking for themselves. And, I'm not that this is part of the deal, but I'm kind of disappointed that my 2 opponents are kind of running as a team, and I don't know if you want to call it ganging up on me or whatever, but I've just never seen anything like that. And I want to keep all of this above board and clean and do whatever is best for the city. I think that's what we got to do going forward. Code enforcement, public safety, got some information over there that has all of my qualifications. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Commissioner. And Commissioner Clawson.
Well, thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for the opportunity. And one of the interesting things about being last, and I chose to be last, is that everybody's already talked about all the great things, and I agree on everything. We need to plan carefully. Some of the questions that TJ brought up tonight are complex questions that don't have easy answers. The tax question is terrible. The water question is very difficult. And I appreciate your question, TJ. Let me say that. You've been very fair, and I appreciate everything you've said. Although they've been kind of tough, there were several times I was glad that you didn't ask me first. Let me go on the record about that, what the answer was. But what I'd like to tell you is that I've served this community all my life. I've served this great nation. I have lived here all my life. I was born in Galveston, and we moved here shortly after the Texas City explosion. And I was born shortly after that, the Texas City explosion. And I also feel that I have been involved in government long enough that I understand all the parts of government. I've taken on some tough assignments. The CAD board that we mentioned. Sometimes, and my wife will tell you, I wondered why I did that. That's probably one of the most difficult tasks that I've ever had. But my intention is to set that straight. For once, let's get that system in order and get our house in order and move along. It impacts so much of our community. But I'd appreciate your vote and your support. I'd appreciate the fact that that you would continue to look on what we have accomplished as acceptable and vote for us in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. This is, as I pointed out, a Texas City Commissioners Forum. There is another technically on the ballot contested race out there, but as it turns out, one of the candidates is not actively running, but we thought it would be fair, at least the candidate who is actively running. They're both on the ballot, but Johnny Hollowell's on there, but Earl Alexander is here running for Precinct 1. Earl, come on over here so you're on camera, by the way. They don't want you just here. And we'll give you 90 seconds, just to introduce yourself to the audience and take this mic here.
Again, thank you all for the platform. I am Earl Alexander, running for City Commissioner, District 1. I am not running against Ms. Thelma Bowie. She has decided to step down because she moved out of the district. And what she decided to do was, she always said if she left, she would like for someone a positive person to take her place. They say that you are a product of your environment. This is my environment. In 1993, I started out here at College of the Mainland, and they wouldn't let me just sit around. So then we started walking the streets, working with campaign, registering voters. And from that, I became Student Role Model of the Year. Then I kept volunteering because it felt good to give back to the community and being a product of this community. Then I became one of the ISD's Volunteer of the Year. And so now it feels a little different that I'm out putting out my own signs, when for the last 25 years I put out signs for other people. I'm the one that passed out the flyers. I knocked on your doors trying to get bonds passed. And so what they said was, it's time for you to get off the bench and get in the game. You're doing all the work, and as the mayor told me, he said, hey, you're doing some good things, but as a commissioner, you'd be able to do things on a larger scale and help more people. And that just really intensified me, because if I can help more people, then that's what I want to do. So I look forward to being the city commissioner, working with these wonderful people. Everybody has been so kind. Ms. Thelma and these men and this young lady, I've been to the commissioner meetings, and I'm proud to be a product of Texas City. I still say from 1997 to today, this is the all-American city. So when people say, hey, what are you going to do different? Not much. I'm just going to keep working to make this city better. They've already shown we're one of the top cities in the nation. We just need to continue to improve and be better than all of these other cities. So I just want to continue to help with the growth and make this the best city.
Earl, thank you so much. Early voting has begun now and through the end of the week. It's 8 to 5 p.m. Then on the 30th of April and on the 1st of May, 7 to 7. Then we have a little break, and then Election Day on the 5th. Again, polls open 7 to 7. And to clear up, there's been some miscommunication out there because other entities in the other parts of the county are running their own elections. If you are in the city of Texas City or Texas City ISD, I should point out, you can go to any county, Galveston County polling center and vote, whether it's early voting or on Election Day as well, to cast your ballot. Doesn't matter where, as long as you're a registered voter, you can go there. Thank you all for coming out here tonight. Get home safely and have a good night.